Hey everybody, BenJAMin here. The Switch 2 has now been out for about 3 months and has already garnered massive success on the sales front, selling over 6 million units in just the first month alone. However, the PR side of Nintendo is a different story, with many baffling decisions by Nintendo themselves, especially when it comes to the pricing of not just their system, but especially their games. It's going to be a very interesting next few months to see how things play out, not just for Nintendo themselves, but also for the rest of the gaming industry as a whole. However, that's not what I'm here to talk about today. Instead, as the name of the video implies, and as you can see right behind me here, yes, I was able to secure myself a Nintendo Switch 2. I had a lot of fun at the launch event over at Best Buy, getting to go with one of my friends. And now that I've played the system for about 100 hours, I like to give my thoughts on the system itself and ultimately decide whether or not it was worth the $450 price tag and let you know if I think you should go out and get one yourself. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Right off the bat, the Switch 2 is significantly bigger than the Switch 1. The original Switch had a screen size of 6.2 inches, whereas the Switch 2 has a 7.9-inch screen. While it doesn't sound like much, this is a huge upgrade from the original system, as a bigger display means it's easier to see what's on screen. When playing split-screen multiplayer in tabletop mode, there are moments where I wonder how I was ever okay with the OG screen size. In addition to the bigger screen, the Switch 2 has a 1080p LCD screen with HDR capabilities, which allows for more crisp and brighter picture. While the colors aren't quite as vibrant as the Switch 1 OLED model, it's not something I noticed to be a hindrance, especially since I never owned an OLED. The Switch 2 is also capable of running games up to 120 frames per second, but as far as I'm aware, there isn't a Switch 2 game that supports this just yet. There are many other aspects about the handheld itself that are major improvements from the original. The audio is much clearer and louder compared to the Switch 1. The kickstand is the best it's ever been, now allowing for a much wider range of angles to set the stand for various scenarios. It also doubles as a handle with its opening on the back. The best part is if you're playing in tabletop mode and need to charge your Switch 2, there is now a second USB-C plug on the top of the screen, ensuring your battery stays at 100%. However, this brings me to one major concern I have for the Switch 2, its battery life. On average, you're only going to get about 2.5 to 6 hours of gameplay, depending on the game that you're playing, as well as the settings you have on the Switch 2 in handheld mode. But unfortunately, I've rarely been able to get to the 3-hour mark before my Nintendo Switch 2 drops to 1%. So, if you plan on playing in handheld mode for long sessions, make sure to keep a charger close by. Finally, let's talk about the dock. While it looks fairly similar to the Switch 1, it is clearly doing a lot more heavy lifting because the system can now do up to 4K resolution in HDR when the system is docked. When I play in docked mode in my theater setup at home, the picture looks absolutely gorgeous. Better than anything I have ever experienced in the past with gaming. Though this is coming from someone who doesn't play on PC or many other game consoles in general. So take that caveat into consideration. But now, let's take a closer look at the new Joy-Cons. The Joy-Con 2 controllers are a bit bigger than their originals, just like the main system. With the bigger buttons and smoother analog sticks, these make the system overall feel much more premium. By comparison, the original Joy-Cons make the original Switch feel more like a toy than a high-tech gaming system. There is one minor downgrade for the Joy-Con 2 controllers, being that there is no IR sensor on the right Joy-Con anymore. However, this feature was barely used on the original system, so this isn't a huge loss. In fact, to replace the IR sensor, both the right and left Joy-Cons now have optical sensors for mouse functionality, and I haven't really used it yet. It's a cool feature to try out on the home screen, and it really gives the Switch 2 a DS and Wii feel, but very few games have actually utilized this feature yet, as far as the ones that I've played so far. On to the Joy-Con grip. This right here is what shows off the Joy-Con upgrades the most. This grip has been the primary way I've played my Switch 2 games despite having a Switch 1 Pro controller. it feels much more comfortable to hold compared to the original Switch 1 grip. This also allows me to mess around with the best new feature, the magnetic Joy-Cons. The rail system on the original Switch was certainly cool for the time and definitely worked, but it wasn't the best in hindsight. There was a little too much give to the point where you felt like you could snap your Joy-Cons right off. But now, the magnets are much more secure and get rid of the gap between the controller and the system. Also, the clicking in and out is so much more satisfying to do than the sliding in and out on the Switch 1. I swear, it feels like a game in and of itself. Almost like a fidget toy. So far, outside the low battery life, I'm loving every bit of the Nintendo Switch 2, especially when it comes to the hardware side of things. Now it's time to officially boot up the system, and, well... Yeah, so the UI for the Switch 2 home screen doesn't look too improved from the original, if at all. The most noticeable change is the icons are curved instead of hard-edged. This gives the Switch 2 a softer feel, if that makes any sense. The buttons on the bottom of the home screen have also been updated with new colors and sound effects. Going through each one, the biggest difference you'll notice in all of these is the loading times are massively improved compared to the Switch 1. This is most apparent in the Nintendo eShop. Oh my goodness! I can actually see what I'm trying to buy. Even the trailers for each game load up instantaneously and at a higher resolution and frame rate, giving you a much better taste of the performance of the games you plan to purchase. I don't know why we had to wait 8 years for the eShop to function properly, but better late than never, I guess. In addition, there's a new app called Game Chat, which involves the new chat functionality exclusive to the Switch 2. Gone is the horrible NSO app that you were required to use if you wanted to chat with friends on the Switch 1. There is now a built-in microphone on the Switch 2, and it works surprisingly well. When testing Game Chat with one of my friends, I was impressed with how far away I was from the system, and the mic could still pick up my voice clearly. Also, the interface kind of looks like Discord, except now you can see what your friends are playing at the same time. The stream quality isn't all too great, but it's still a nice feature to have. And fortunately, you can remove these icons and video feeds from your screen so you can focus on your own game. While Game Chat isn't perfect, it's a very nice feature to have that the Switch 1 didn't offer to the same capacity. But enough about the hardware side of things. Let's finally start getting into the games. Please keep in mind that the footage you're about to see is recorded on my capture card, which can only do a maximum of 1080p 60 FPS. Just want to get that disclaimer out of the way here, but without further ado, let's get into the fun. Before we get into the new games on Switch 2, let's talk about how Switch 1 games have improved by the upgraded hardware. First off, a select few Switch 1 games got free updates that enhance the resolutions and frame rates of specific games. The ones I want to take a look at are Super Mario Odyssey and Splatoon 3, as those are the ones I own. I replayed Super Mario Odyssey last year and thought it held up pretty well. However, you can't deny that the 900p resolution in TV mode does look a little bit fuzzy now, and certain areas that had some frame hiccups can ever so slightly break the immersion of the game. This is especially apparent in New Donk City. So naturally, this was the first place I tried out, and wow! Not only does this game run at a rock-solid 60 FPS, but the game natively runs in 1440p and is upscaled to 4K. And along with the HDR, this game looks spectacular. Not just in New Donk City, but all other locations such as the Sand and Cascade Kingdoms look absolutely incredible. The game also runs at 1080p 60 FPS in handheld mode, which is great. Splatoon 3 was the other game I tried out, and right off the bat, you notice a major difference. See, in all previous Splatoon games, including 3 on Switch 1, the main hub world always ran at 30 FPS, which caused everything like the deep cut intros and the menus to follow suit. It wouldn't be until you entered the lobby, story mode, or other parts of the game that everything would kick up to 60 FPS. But now, the hub world is in 60 FPS, and I can't lie, this threw me off for the first few times I played the game. Obviously, that's not a bad thing. The game looks so much cleaner cleaner now that it's at a native 4K resolution. The new version also doesn't suffer from frame drops in matches, though this was only a real issue in Salmon Run when there were too many enemies on screen. There was also a massive upgrade for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, but I don't have either one of those games. But according to my sister, they're actually playable now. Beyond the free updates, most other Switch 1 games haven't gotten one yet, but the hardware still makes improvements in a few areas. Frame rates and resolutions across the board are much steadier than they were before. This can be seen in any game you boot up, especially games that chugged a lot on Switch 1, like Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. You may even get lucky and find games that just run at a higher frame rate now, such as Mario + Rabbids Kingdom Battle. However, there is still one major area that is upgraded across the board: load times. Take Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, for example. Smash games are infamous for taking forever to load certain menus, but now all of them have been accelerated drastically. In addition, when selecting a character, the skins used to take a few moments to load, but now it's instantaneous. This goes for the transitions between menus too. The best upgrade is that the battles immediately load as soon as you press "Ready to Fight" to start a match. It's all so clean. Even games like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe benefit from short load times. You may think there wouldn't be much of a difference considering it would only take 10 seconds tops for a track to load on Switch 1, but I'll take 2 seconds any day of the week. So overall, playing Switch 1 games on the Switch 2 are the definitive ways to experience these games, especially the ones that struggled in one way or another on the original hardware. But now, we pivot to a pair of games that were not free to upgrade, but instead charged a small $10 fee per game, those being The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. These two games are masterpieces on Switch 1, so getting a little more than a simple patch is well deserved. But is the $10 upgrade warranted? Well, let's start with the graphics first. On Switch 1, both games were capped at 900p 30fps in TV mode and 720p 30fps in handheld mode. Now on Switch 2, both games run at 4K 60fps in TV mode and 1080p 60fps in handheld mode, while also supporting HDR in both modes. This is a massive improvement from the original versions of these games. In replaying the entirety of Breath of the Wild on Switch 2, never once did I experience a single resolution or frame drop. Big explosions? No frame drops. Using magnesis or stasis? No frame drops. Even in the infamous Korok Forest where you thought cutting down a single piece of grass would crash your entire system? Buttery smooth. The HDR makes the colors pop so much better than before, and the load times are significantly reduced from the original. It's truly an upgrade in every conceivable way. All these upgrades ring true in Tears of the Kingdom as well, though I haven't spent as much time replaying it yet, so I don't have a full grasp on the changes that have been made. I will say that it's super cool to dive all the way from the Sky Islands to the depths of Hyrule in 60fps, though it is much easier to spot pop-in compared to Breath of the Wild just due to those higher resolutions. So far, these games sound almost exactly like free updates. So why did Nintendo charge $10 for these enhancements? Well, that's where the new NSO app comes into play. Using the app, you can use what are called Zelda notes, which help you track how close you are to 100%ing both games. There are even new voice memories that give you extra lore on specific locations from Zelda's perspective. In Tears of the Kingdom specifically, you can even share auto-build creations with other people so you don't have to build them yourself. For all these features, however, you still have to go through the NSO app to access most of them. So, while replaying Breath of the Wild specifically, I ended up not using this feature hardly at all, which is a bit of a bummer. Does that mean the upgrade packs were not worth it? No, of course not. These upgrades got me to replay both games from beginning to end. These are two of my favorite games of all time, so getting to play them in the definitive way was a dream come true. I also can finally parry Guardians consistently now. That's how impactful these upgrades are on a technical level. So, with all this being said, what do I think about the Nintendo Switch 2? And should you go to pick one up yourself? Well, even if the price is a little steeper than what most people were expecting, I still think $450 is just the right price of admission for the Switch 2. The bigger system, bigger screen, higher quality picture and sound, vastly improved Joy-Cons, and the overall improvements to resolution, frame rates, and even load times on all the games make this a worthy next-gen system to pick up. If you already have a Switch 1 and a large library of Switch 1 games, and you're looking for a better way to play them all, there's no reason not to get a Switch 2. Even if some games like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom do require small fees for the upgrades. And even if you've never owned a Nintendo Switch system at any point, I honestly still would recommend the Switch 2. Mostly because not only would you be on board for any exclusives that would come out on the Switch 2, but you also have access to the large catalog of Switch 1 games with many first-party classics that are must-plays for many gamers. Finally, if you got a Switch 2 already, tell me a little bit about what you think of it. Let me know in the comments down below, and be sure to like and subscribe to this channel to keep up to date with the latest things I've got going on this channel. Speaking of which, I didn't really get to talk about any Switch 2 exclusives, but that's mostly because I wanted to save those for future videos, just because there'll be a lot more I want to dive into for each individual game. I kind of wonder which game I should start with. It's got to be something simple, something that maybe something that came with the system and everything. Oh man, what should I do? Oh! Donkey Kong Bonanza! I just got this in the mail 2 days ago, so I barely started it. But it's fun, and this is what the case looks like and everything. These are what Switch 2 cases look like anyways. The cartridges are red now. Oh, the Joy-Con straps! This is not a game at all. But they are much nicer and much easier to use compared to the Switch 1. Ah, dadgummit, I really don't know. What else did I miss? There's got to be something, even just a small thing I didn't talk about. The case, the carrying case for the Switch 2. Look at this. You got like the inside here. It kind of flips up. You can set it up as a stand. That you can keep all your games in this little thing here. Yeah, it's a pretty nice little case itself. Oh. Yeah, I guess I could talk about Mario Kart World next.